In the glamorous world of entertainment, where stage lights often obscure many hidden corners, sometimes an unexpected moment lays bare the raw truth. That night the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live became the arena for a clash of two resolute wills. On one side, the host with his sharp satirical style, Jimmy Kimmel, and on the other, Denzel Washington, a symbol of calm and fortitude. That fateful interview was not just a heated exchange, but also a direct challenge to the forgotten ethical boundaries in the entertainment industry. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The studio lights shone brighter than ever, casting a dazzling glow on the sparkling stage of Jimmy Kimmel Live. When Jimmy Kimmel, with his familiar smile and piercing eyes, introduced, "Please welcome Denzel Washington," the studio erupted. Denzel stepped onto the stage amid thunderous cheers. Kimmel shook Denzel's hand, appearing extremely cordial. "It's an honor to welcome the one and only Denzel Washington," Kimmel began, his tone full of respect but with a mischievous smirk lurking at the corners of his mouth. "Looking at you, I can't help but wonder, did God create Denzel to prove one person can be an actor, director, producer, and an endless source of inspiration? Or are you just too busy to age?" The sharp, gently teasing jab immediately drew laughter from the audience. Denzel merely nodded, offering a slight smile in return, but his eyes maintained a certain distance. "Playing a wartime general with inner turmoil is just so, Denzel. How did you prepare for such a heavyweight role?" Kimmel asked, his tone shifting to a slightly more serious note, enough to seem professional. Denzel began sharing about his process of researching the role, the challenges of portraying the character's psychological depth, and the importance of conveying a message of resilience and defiance. He spoke calmly, profoundly, like a professor imparting valuable wisdom. However, as Denzel was passionately analyzing the philosophy behind the character, Kimmel abruptly interrupted. "That sounds fascinating, Denzel," he said, his smile widening in an odd way. "But speaking of battles and resilience, off-screen, I've heard your life hasn't been short of its own battles. Specifically, some rumors about tremors in your family fortress. Our audience is curious. Does the great equalizer need someone to protect him? Or are you just keeping secrets for a new script we don't know about yet?" The studio fell silent for a moment. Kimmel's question, seemingly harmless, had inadvertently crossed one of the most sacred boundaries. The audience began to murmur. A few awkward laughs broke out, but everyone sensed the sudden shift in the atmosphere. Denzel maintained his calm smile, but a glint of coldness flashed in his eyes. "Jimmy," he said, his voice still warm but with a clear firmness, "as I just shared, I'm here to talk about defiance and the messages the film aims to convey. It's about inner strength, about overcoming adversity. I believe your audience cares more about those things than unverified gossip." Denzel's response was not just a polite refusal, but a subtle reminder of the true purpose of a professional interview. He didn't belittle Kimmel, but simply redirected the conversation to its proper course. But Jimmy Kimmel wasn't one to back down easily. A spark of challenge gleamed in his eyes. "Oh, I get it," Kimmel said with a dismissive shrug. "So a legend like Denzel Washington only wants to talk about high-minded stuff. Fair enough. But you know, Denzel, here we prefer real-life stories over meticulously crafted PR scripts. We want to see the real person behind those great roles. Unless there's something about that real person you don't want us to know." Kimmel's words were a direct attack. The sarcasm in his tone became more evident, making the studio atmosphere grow heavy. The audience's murmurs grew louder. Many began to frown, uncomfortable with the host's aggression. "Jimmy," Denzel spoke, his voice warm and clear, "I believe respect is the foundation of any relationship, whether between a host and a guest, or anyone in society. When we agree on certain terms before stepping onto this stage, it's not about controlling the narrative or over-the-top PR, as you put it. It's about mutual respect. That's professionalism." Kimmel narrowed his eyes. The familiar smile on his lips seemed to freeze. He leaned forward, his gaze sweeping the audience as if seeking their approval. "Oh, professionalism, huh, Denzel?" Kimmel retorted, his tone tinged with disdain but still laced with his usual playful demeanor. "I think professionalism here means giving the audience what they really want to hear. And trust me, they don't want a dry press conference where a great actor recites a prepped PR script. They want the truth, the real-life stories you're trying to hide. You know, a celebrity's personal life is always the most compelling script no director could ever create. The truth, Jimmy, comes in many forms, Denzel said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of experience. The truth about art, about the values we aim to convey through each role. The truth about the struggles depicted in the script of my film. Those are real truths, Jimmy. As for the rumors you're mentioning, they're just specks of dust trying to cloud a bigger picture. A picture of a real life that doesn't need anyone's embellishment. Denzel tilted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly, not in anger but in deep disappointment. I've spent my life telling stories. I believe everyone has the right to tell their own story in their own way, and above all the right to protect what's most sacred. My family is not a script for anyone's entertainment, Jimmy. Kimmel burst into laughter, a forced and artificial sound. Come on, Denzel, you're blowing this out of proportion. This is a talk show. We're just having an open conversation. Or do you think I'm trying to expose something huge? I'm just trying to connect you with my audience. They love you, they want to know everything about you, even what you keep hidden. I don't think you're blowing things out of proportion, Jimmy, Denzel replied, unflinching. I think you're deliberately ignoring the most basic boundaries. Connecting with the audience doesn't mean exploiting their personal lives or those of your guests. There's an ethical line that a professional in media must uphold. You can't just brush it off as an open conversation when you're clearly trying to invade someone's privacy. The tension in the studio grew thicker. The audience was completely silent. You could hear the faint gasps of a few. They were witnessing an unimaginable showdown, a legend standing up to defend himself against a famous host who was increasingly revealing his lack of respect. Denzel didn't just speak with words. With his calm demeanor and commanding presence, he rendered Kimmel's every remark meaningless and weak. Kimmel began to lose his composure. The smile vanished entirely from his face. He gripped the desk tightly, his eyes glaring coldly at Denzel. Who do you think you are, Denzel? Telling me how to run my show? Kimmel snapped, his voice hoarse with rising anger. Some seasoned star who just recites lines, clinging to old fame to act sanctimonious? This is my stage, my rules. My audience doesn't need a dry moral lecture. They want the truth, what you're hiding. Kimmel's words hit like a punch to the face. He no longer maintained his friendly or humorous facade, fully exposing his hostility and contempt. The audience was stunned. Some began whispering, showing shock and disapproval. Denzel Washington remained seated, his posture unchanged, but his eyes were sharp as knives, locked onto Jimmy. Jimmy, Denzel said, his voice lower, full of authority. I know exactly who I am. I'm a man of principles, a man who believes in truth and respect. The question is, do you know who you are? Because this isn't how a professional behaves, especially one who claims to respect their guests. I didn't come here to be insulted. His microphone captured every word clearly, resonating through the eerily silent studio. Denzel Washington's resolute words echoed in the chilling silence of the studio. It wasn't a shout, but a steel-clad strike wrapped in absolute calm, landing squarely on Jimmy Kimmel's self-assurance. Kimmel, clearly unaccustomed to being directly challenged by a guest on his own show, was cornered. The mocking smile vanished entirely from his face, replaced by a look of seething anger. His jaw muscles clenched tight. "Don't you dare lecture me, Denzel," Kimmel snarled, his voice dripping with hostility. "Who do you think you are telling me how to run my show? Some seasoned star who just recites lines, clinging to old fame to act sanctimonious? This is my stage, my rules. My audience doesn't need a dry moral lecture. They want the truth, what you're hiding." Denzel Washington remained astonishingly composed. He didn't flinch, didn't frown, didn't show a hint of anger. His eyes locked onto Kimmel, not with hostility, but with an indescribable pity. Denzel's calmness only made Kimmel's raging outburst seem absurd and meaningless. "I'm just reminding you of the basic principles any honest professional should uphold. The right to respect, the right to privacy, and the duty of a host to create a professional environment, not a stage for exposing others for ratings." Denzel leaned slightly forward, his eyes sharper than ever. You seem to forget there's a social contract between a host and a guest. We come here to share about our work, our art, things of value. We're not puppets for you to manipulate or open books for you to flip through our private lives just to satisfy the crowd's curiosity. That's not truth. That's exploitation, Jimmy. And that's something an honest media professional would never do. Kimmel held his breath. Denzel's words weren't just a rebuttal, but a piercing lesson, a clear indictment. Kimmel felt stripped bare, his unprofessionalism and lack of ethics exposed before millions watching. His anger erupted. No longer restrained, he slammed his hand on the desk, the loud thud echoing in the silent studio. "Shut up, Denzel," Kimmel hissed, no longer caring that they were live on air. His face flushed red, veins bulging on his temples. "You think you can sit there acting holier than thou and do whatever you want? I gave you a chance to be honest, to connect with the audience, but you chose to play the good guy. Fine. You want to act so principled? Then I'll show you the consequences of daring to defy me on my own stage." Kimmel spun toward the production team, his eyes wild with rage. "Cut to commercial. Cut now," he shouted, his voice breaking with fury. The director and crew, caught off guard by this explosive outburst, fumbled momentarily. The brief delay allowed the cameras to keep rolling, capturing Jimmy Kimmel, the host known for his clever humor, now revealing a face distorted with anger. The audience in the studio began to stir, whispers spreading like wildfire. Many were shocked, some gaping, while others quickly pulled out their phones to record this extraordinary moment. As Kimmel yelled at the crew, Denzel remained seated, remarkably calm. He didn't look away, didn't show fear or offense. His eyes stayed fixed on Kimmel, like an observer watching a failed experiment. Denzel's composure only highlighted Kimmel's chaos and lack of control, making him seem weak and pitiful in his rage. "Jimmy," Denzel said softly, his voice loud enough to cut through Kimmel's tirade. "You're only hurting yourself. This anger isn't worth it." Kimmel whipped back around. "What did you say? I'm hurting myself? You're the one hurting yourself, Denzel. You're the one ruining your image with your arrogance and dodging the truth. Don't act superior with me." The large screen abruptly switched to a commercial, but the sound of the argument lingered in the audience's ears, especially for those witnessing it live. During the break, the backstage atmosphere was tense to the extreme. Kimmel's production team and assistants surrounded him, trying to calm him and discuss how to handle the situation. Kimmel's face still burned with anger, occasionally glancing at Denzel. On the other side, Denzel Washington's management team was conferring, their faces concerned but resolute. Denzel remained seated in the guest chair, not leaving. He pulled out his phone, scrolling casually, as if oblivious to the chaos around him. His eyes occasionally flicked toward the arguing crew backstage, but he didn't engage. Denzel knew he had done what needed to be done, and now it was time to wait for the other side's next move. In his mind, a decision had been made. He would not continue this game. The show's theme music blared, signaling the interview was about to resume after the tumultuous commercial break. The audience, still buzzing with discussion about what had just happened, quickly settled into their seats, their eyes filled with curiosity fixed on the stage. They had no idea what awaited in the minutes to come. Jimmy Kimmel returned to his spot, a smile back on his lips, but it was strained and artificial. His eyes were still bloodshot, and his face bore traces of tension. He tried to display his usual polished charm, but the earlier incident had peeled back a layer of his true self. "Well, apologies to our audience for that little technical glitch earlier," Kimmel began, his voice attempting to sound relaxed, but carrying a hint of bitterness. "And sorry if I touched a nerve there, Denzel. I guess some topics are just too sensitive for some people. But hey, we're still good friends, right? And that's all that matters." Kimmel's apology lacked any sincerity. It was laced with passive-aggressive undertones, subtly blaming Denzel for being overly sensitive or unable to handle a joke. He even tried to frame their relationship as good friends to falsely smooth things over. The audience in the studio saw through the pretense. A low wave of murmurs rose again, but this time they carried a tone of disdain. Denzel Washington sat upright, his steady gaze locked on Kimmel. He didn't offer a smile in return, or show any sign of accepting the apology. He'd heard enough. He had given Kimmel a chance to stop, to show respect. But Kimmel had chosen the path of confrontation and unprofessionalism. Denzel knew that to protect his dignity and convey a message about respect, he had to act. "Jimmy," Denzel spoke, his voice still warm but more resolute than ever. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, exuding a stance of strength and determination. "I've been in this industry long enough to recognize when someone's trying to stir up controversy at another's expense, just for ratings. That might be how you operate, it might be this show's strategy, but I'm under no obligation to play along." The studio held its breath. Not a sound. Denzel's words weren't a question or a threat, but a definitive commanding statement. He refused to let himself be used as a tool for media antics. Kimmel was stunned. The fake smile on his lips froze, his eyes widening. He hadn't expected Denzel to so openly call him out on live television. What are you saying, Denzel?" Kimmel stammered, trying to regain control of the situation. "Are you implying I'm exploiting you?" "I'm not implying anything, Jimmy," Denzel replied, his voice cold and clear. "I'm stating it plainly, and judging by your reaction, I think we both know it's true. I can't continue this conversation when respect isn't upheld." Denzel slowly stood up. His movements were deliberate, dignified, full of purpose. He wasn't rushed, didn't show anger, but every gesture radiated an unshakable decision. The audience in the studio gasped. No one could believe what they were witnessing. An A-list star, a Hollywood legend, was refusing to continue the interview and walking off the stage of one of America's biggest talk shows. Kimmel completely lost control. His face paled with rage and embarrassment. He couldn't accept being publicly humiliated like this. You're done," Kimmel shouted, his voice shrill with fury. "You're done, get off my stage now." Kimmel frantically gestured toward the wings, where men in black suits, burly security guards, stood watch. "Security, get Mr. Mr. Washington out of this studio now." His slip-up in the heat of the moment only further exposed his weakness. The audience erupted. Boos, murmurs and shocked shouts filled the room. Some stood in protest, others called out Denzel's name. A few felt panicked by the unprecedented scene. Cell phones were raised even higher, recording everything. Denzel Washington remained remarkably calm. As two large security guards approached, he raised both hands in a gentle gesture. "No need for that," Denzel said, his voice still resonating clearly. "I can walk myself." He turned to the audience, offering a warm, empathetic smile, a stark contrast to Kimmel's furious, unhinged expression. "I'm sorry to all of you for this spectacle," Denzel said, his voice tinged with sadness but still resolute. "This isn't what any of us expected tonight, but sometimes there are boundaries that need to be protected, and respect, dignity, these are things that can't be traded away." Denzel's words were a final declaration, a legacy etched in that historic moment. He turned his back on Jimmy Kimmel, who stood there face flushed with anger and helplessness. Denzel walked slowly, with dignity toward the wings. Each step radiated resolve, without a hint of hesitation or regret. He didn't look back, leaving behind a crumbling Jimmy Kimmel, in a fit of rage and a studio erupting in chaos. As Denzel disappeared behind the curtain, the audience's applause exploded louder than ever. It was no longer just applause for a star, but for a hero, an icon who dared to stand against injustice and disrespect. Many in the audience began to stand, turning their backs on the stage in a clear boycott of Jimmy Kimmel. The atmosphere grew tense, filled with outrage directed at the host. The moment Denzel Washington vanished behind the curtain, leaving a stunned Jimmy Kimmel on stage with an angry crowd, a media storm began to brew. The Jimmy Kimmel Live studio may have tried to cut to commercial, but they couldn't cut away reality. Within minutes, the first videos surfaced on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Initial headlines were simple. Denzel Washington kicked off Jimmy Kimmel's stage, quickly morphing into Jimmy Kimmel loses it. Denzel Washington walks off in honor, followed by explosive hashtags, Kimmel kicked Denzel, respect Denzel, boycott Kimmel. Raw, unedited clips became undeniable evidence, exposing Kimmel's aggressive, unprofessional behavior. They spread at lightning speed, shared millions of times within an hour. The public's reaction was immediate and ferocious. Social media overflowed with scathing criticism of Jimmy Kimmel. "Can't believe a host could act so disrespectfully," one Twitter user wrote. "Denzel Washington is a legend. He deserves so much better," another commented. Denzel's calm, principled stance in the face of Kimmel's rage made him a hero in the public's eyes. Many expressed admiration for how he upheld his dignity. Not only regular viewers but also prominent figures in the entertainment industry began to speak out. Actors, directors, and producers of significant influence posted in support of Denzel and condemned Kimmel. "What happened to Denzel Washington tonight is unacceptable," acclaimed actress Viola Davis shared on her personal page. "Respect is the bare minimum." A director who had worked with Kimmel hinted, "This isn't the first time Jimmy's shown his true colors. He just picked the wrong person this time." Major news outlets from CNN and Fox News to The Hollywood Reporter and Variety rushed to cover the story. The clash between Denzel Washington and Jimmy Kimmel quickly became the global entertainment news centerpiece, overshadowing all other events of the day. Media experts and cultural analysts dove in, turning it into a broader debate about professional ethics, the culture of exploiting celebrities' personal lives, and the power of talk show hosts. Meanwhile, backstage at Jimmy Kimmel Live, chaos reigned. Producers scrambled through phone calls, trying to put out fires from all sides. They knew the unedited footage spreading online would be a PR disaster. Kimmel, still fuming, shouted into his phone at his team, blaming everyone but himself. He couldn't believe a guest had dared challenge him to this degree. "How did this happen?" Kimmel hissed, gripping his phone tightly. "Delete those videos. Take them down now. This can't air officially." But his panic pleas were futile. The internet was an unstoppable force, and what had happened was recorded and shared beyond reversal. ABC, the network behind Jimmy Kimmel Live, faced immense pressure from the public, sponsors, and shareholders. They hurriedly issued a brief, vague press release acknowledging an unfortunate incident during the taping and apologizing for the unwanted experiences of the audience and guest, without directly blaming Kimmel or Denzel. It was a weak attempt to calm the situation. But with raw videos flooding social media, the statement was meaningless. Jimmy Kimmel's PR crisis was only beginning. The media storm was just the beginning of what was coming for Jimmy Kimmel. In the days that followed, the wave of outrage not only persisted but grew, seeping into every corner of the entertainment industry and pop culture. The public's voice, already fed up with cheap tactics and disrespect, had found a perfect flashpoint. A flood of shocking revelations about Kimmel began to surface. Beyond anonymous comments, former employees of Jimmy Kimmel Live and past guests now boldly spoke out, recounting horrific experiences in the toxic work environment under Kimmel's reign. A former writer for the show, requesting anonymity, shared with a major publication, "What you saw Denzel Washington endure on air, that's the Jimmy we dealt with daily. He could turn into a completely different person once the cameras stopped rolling." His anger and authoritarianism drove many to quit in tears. Stories emerged of Kimmel berating staff, making unreasonable demands, and creating intense pressure for viral moments. These accounts solidified an image of a rude, uncontrollable Jimmy Kimmel, starkly contrasting the cheerful, witty persona he projected on air. ABC, the network behind the show, faced an unprecedented crisis. Non-stop internal meetings took place. From top executives to legal and PR teams, major sponsors began pulling out or pausing contracts, unwilling to associate their brands with a scandal-ridden program. Pressure from the public and investors forced ABC to take tougher measures. Just days after the incident, an announcement was made. Jimmy Kimmel would be temporarily absent from the show for an unscheduled break. Insiders knew this was a forced suspension by the network to cool the situation and reassess the show's future. Kimmel, still stubbornly believing he was in the right, was reluctantly removed from the host's chair. He reportedly erupted in a final fit of rage at producers when they explained there was no way to sway public opinion with the original videos circulating. Meanwhile, Denzel Washington shone through the storm. 3 days after the incident, he appeared at a pre-planned charity event. Hundreds of reporters and fans swarmed him, all eager to hear his take on the Kimmel debacle. Denzel, with his characteristic calm, neither dodged nor showed anger. Instead of directly attacking Kimmel, he delivered a poignant speech about the value of respect and human dignity. "Look, we all have bad days," Denzel began. his voice warm and empathetic, a stark contrast to Kimmel's astonishing lack of it. "But I believe when you invite someone into your space, whether it's your home or a TV show, there's a certain level of respect that must be upheld. When boundaries are set, they need to be honored. That's all I stood up for." He paused, his gaze steady on the crowd of reporters, a faint smile carrying layers of meaning. "I'm not talking about my personal story. I'm talking about a principle, a fundamental principle of self-respect and professionalism." When a reporter asked if he'd heard from Kimmel since the incident, Denzel gave a slight smirk, his eyes saying more than words. "No," he replied simply. "But that's okay. Sometimes silence says everything that needs to be said." His words were not just an answer, but a powerful message, a subtle slap at Kimmel's lack of sincerity. When Jimmy Kimmel finally returned to the show a week later, the audience witnessed a meticulously scripted apology. "I want to address what happened last week with Denzel Washington," he began, his tone softer than usual, his face seemingly remorseful. "Things got heated, and I reacted poorly. For that I apologize to Denzel and to you, the audience." But he couldn't restrain his true nature. Kimmel quickly pivoted to awkward jokes, trying to downplay the incident and subtly blame Denzel for being too sensitive. "Guess some people are just too sensitive to my humor, right?" he said with a forced smile, attempting to get the audience to laugh along. But no laughter came. The studio audience sat in eerie silence. The disingenuous apology backfired spectacularly. Social media's reaction was immediate and brutal. "Empty apology," one user commented. "He still doesn't get what he did wrong." "This isn't an apology, it's victim blaming," another stated bluntly. Denzel Washington, for his part, maintained dignified silence in response to the apology. He neither accepted nor publicly rejected it, letting his silence convey his contempt. This restraint only bolstered his reputation, reinforcing his image as a professional unshaken by provocation despite repeated attacks. For Jimmy Kimmel, this marked the start of a challenging chapter, a scar on his career that wouldn't easily fade. Jimmy Kimmel Live's ratings plummeted. Many viewers, fed up with the antics and disrespect, followed through on their boycott promises. The incident with Denzel Washington was the final straw, turning them away completely. A-list stars, the lifeblood of late-night talk shows, began quietly canceling appearances. No one wanted to be the next victim of Kimmel's aggressive interview style or tied to a show mired in ethical scandal. Kimmel's guest list grew sparse, forcing producers to scramble for lesser-known names to fill airtime. Backstage, the work environment at Jimmy Kimmel Live reportedly deteriorated significantly. Former employees' revelations emboldened current staff to speak out about the toxic culture they'd endured for years. HR complaints flooded in, prompting ABC to launch a comprehensive internal investigation. An anonymous crew member shared, "It's like the dam finally broke. For years people accepted it as part of the job, that you had to endure the tantrums and disrespect to work on a big show. Now people realize no one should have to tolerate abuse to do their job." The network, wary of reputational damage and potential legal risks from the toxic workplace, began quietly exploring options for the show's future, including finding a replacement for Kimmel. The future of Jimmy Kimmel Live hung in the balance like never before. In contrast, for Denzel Washington, the incident became a shining milestone in his already illustrious career. His calm, principled stand against aggression earned him absolute admiration from the public and industry peers. Denzel became an emblem of resilience, a man who dared to defend his dignity and the principles he believed in. Critics and media analysts hailed him as a hero, a trailblazer in the fight against unethical media practices. Rival talk shows quickly seized the opportunity, extending invitations for Denzel to appear and promote Defiance properly. Denzel eventually accepted an offer from a competing network. His new interview was a stark contrast to the Kimmel experience. He was treated with utmost respect, given space to share deeply about his role, the filmmaking process, and meaningful messages without interruptions from personal questions or sarcasm. The interview was widely praised for its professionalism and depth, further cementing Denzel's status as a true artist. The incident sparked a broader conversation in the entertainment industry about power dynamics in celebrity interviews and the often exploitative nature of talk shows, where viral moments are prioritized over meaningful dialogue. Other prominent hosts re-evaluated their formats, promising closer collaboration with guests on interview topics and personal boundaries. Producers grew more cautious about chasing ratings by exploiting stars' private lives. Industry veterans noted the incident's significance due to Denzel Washington's stature. A seasoned publicist remarked, "When someone of Denzel Washington's caliber stands up and says enough, people listen. He has the power to walk away without fearing for his career." Sadly, lesser-known actors don't have that luxury, which is why such abuse has been tolerated for so long. As weeks passed, the incident remained a cautionary tale in Hollywood. Jimmy Kimmel's reputation suffered what many considered irreparable damage. Meanwhile, Denzel Washington emerged as a hero for standing up for justice. The full extent of Kimmel's professional consequences was still unfolding, with industry analysts closely watching ABC's next moves. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain: the entertainment landscape was forever changed by those tense moments on stage. When one of Hollywood's most respected actors refused to be bullied, even by one of television's most powerful figures, history was made. It was a powerful reminder that no matter how bright the spotlight, dignity and truth remain the highest values worth defending at all costs. The clash between Denzel Washington and Jimmy Kimmel in this story is a test of core values in today's American society. Denzel, an icon of calm and integrity, stood in stark contrast to Kimmel, who represented a culture obsessed with ratings and instant attention. First, it's about the power of setting and protecting personal boundaries. In the digital age where every detail can be exploited, Denzel proved not every aspect of one's private life needs to be public. His firm refusal to engage with aggression, even from an influential figure, is a vital reminder of everyone's fundamental right to privacy. The story underscores the strength of staying calm under pressure. While Kimmel lost control, Denzel didn't descend into an argument, but responded with reason and composure. In America's high-stakes environment, from workplaces to social debates, maintaining emotional control and clear thinking preserves dignity and demonstrates true strength beyond heated words. Finally, Kimmel's downfall shows the consequences of pursuing gain at all costs. His willingness to trample ethical principles for ratings led to reputational loss and a career crisis. This is a stark warning. In every facet of life, from business to relationships, success built on disrespect and unethical behavior is unsustainable. As Denzel implicitly affirmed, honor and truth always outweigh fleeting fame. This is a vital lesson for every individual in modern culture. Hit that subscribe button to stay updated on in-depth Hollywood analyses, and thank you for taking the time to follow this inspiring story of resilience and integrity. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring fascinating slices of the entertainment world.